So when we talk about God's attributes then, what do we mean? Here's a definition. Attributes are properties that constitute what God is, his nature or essence, and therefore they apply equally to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So, here's the amazing thing about God. God consists of attributes that are unique to him. Everything that is in existence has attributes. This table, for instance, that's holding my books. Let's consider just the top of the table. What are its attributes? Well, it's round, so it has the attribute of roundness. It's black. That's its color. It's got a certain weight. I don't know what the weight would be, but it's got a certain weight. It has a certain size and dimensions, a certain volume. So each of those things are attributes. And when we take those attributes, roundness, blackness, this particular weight, this particular volume, these particular dimensions, when all of those, think of each of those attributes as a line crisscrossing. When all of those attributes crisscross, in the middle, what do you have? You have this. It is the combination of those attributes that make this. Now, how many attributes are there in the world? There's probably millions and millions of attributes because, green is an attribute, but how many shades of green are there, right? So the number of combinations are amazing. Did you know, by the way, that here in our library, I talked about the Aleppo Codex. Do you know that in our library we have a volume, we have a book that actually contains every book that has ever been written? It's in that one volume. It's called the dictionary. Every book that has ever been written is simply a rearrangement of various words taken out of the dictionary. And every object is simply a different combination of attributes. Now, the interesting thing about God, though, is that he consists of attributes that aren't true of anything else in this visible world. When we talk about God, we're not talking about roundness, blackness. We're not talking about color, weight, and so on. We're talking about a completely different set of attributes. So what can we say about divine attributes, some features of divine attributes? Two things. First of all, what attributes are and what attributes are not. Attributes are permanent and intrinsic. The divine attributes are permanent and intrinsic. So we're not talking about moods. We're not talking about modes. These are permanent features of the divine nature that are essential to who God is. They are intrinsic to his being, and they are inseparable from his essence. That's what attributes are. Attributes are not human conceptions that are projected on God. They are not simply, well, God is incomprehensible. We have to describe him some way. Well, let's describe him this way. They are not human projections upon God. The attributes of God have been revealed to us by God himself. Now, the attributes of God are typically classified in two ways, two groups or two classifications. On the one hand, we have non-communicable attributes. Another way to describe them is they are non-transferable attributes. That is, these are attributes that are true of God alone. For instance, God is self-existent and independent. We talked about that with reference to his name. God is self-existent and independent, not dependent on anything outside of himself for existence. God is eternal. We will never be eternal. Right? God exists eternally, backwards and forwards. Now, we by grace will participate in God's eternal nature and live in immortality eternally into the future, but we do not exist eternally into the past. God alone is eternal in that sense. God alone is infinite, which means that he's omnipresent, present everywhere. Omniscient, meaning that he is all-knowing. He is omnipotent, all-potent, all-powerful. And he is immutable and unchanging. So those are some of the non-communicable attributes of God that we may participate in by grace to some degree, but we will never possess those attributes. But then there's the communicable attributes of God, the transferable attributes of God. We say that God is loving, kind, merciful, gracious, holy, good, faithful, righteous, just. Those are attributes of God that we can participate in, that are transferable, that are communicable. And in fact, it is growth in those divine attributes that really constitute the aim of the Christian journey. In a future session, we'll look a little bit at what is God's ultimate intention for human beings. We got a bit of a hint when we considered in a previous session Genesis 1:2. We are created to reflect God's image. We are created to reflect who God is in his nature. Peter says in his letter, in his epistle, that we as followers of Jesus Christ are partakers of the divine nature. What does that mean? Well, it means that we have immortality, but it also means that we have planted within us the seeds and are called to ever grow in the divine virtues of love and kindness and mercy and grace and goodness and faithfulness and so on. These are the communicable attributes of God to which we are called to grow and reflect.